the water.
You thought you had control, had us in our homes, doing what we're told. Then something seemed to change. We became enraged, voices unrestrained. Someone said no more.
sin. Blood red lips, my tongue's on fire, screaming lust, maybe young, unholy desire. Left and love in the devil's den. Fuck the rules, let's bend and offend. Burn down, breathe in, come taste the blasphemy. Tune in, turn on, we revel in ecstasy. Secret horse sweating in a burning bed. In a 69 with Satan giving godlike head. Ladies and gentlemen, come join in the feast. Eat who you want, God, man, or beast. And when the devil's mark, I'm proudly drenched in sin. And sexual profit let the whole rainbow in. Making politicians choke on their unholy lies, so we can all come together under purple skies. We are leftist desire, they are moral decay. We're the wet dream when the fears come to play. Orgasmic possession rising up from below. Let's free their minds and seduce some new souls.
Yeah. Listen. I like the old Steve Perry. He made you wanna scream more. Like a maraschino cherry popping at the candy store. I'm not the old tooth fairy. I'm coming for your soul. Like an unsweet berry in the bitter, bitter cold. I'm creeping like an onslaught. I catch you, drag you in a hole. Heavy pain is your next stop. Grab you, got you like a troll. I got powers uncanny. Now you're under my control. I see you getting really clammy. Terrifying is my role.
But they're begging for more. Got them on their knees, screaming on the floor. Worship me, yeah, I'll make you sweat. They call me the devil, but they haven't met me yet. The cross is burning, but so is desire. I'm a pansexual prophet of sin and fire. A meal baby, take a drag of the sin. We fuck to the rhythm of a world on spin. Hell's got room for lovers like me. We burn bright in a blasphemy. Come touch the flesh, let the fire end. Scream my name while we both sin. Boys, girls, devils in disguise. We're the beast, baby, don't be shy. Politics, sex, and a hit from the party. Outrage the righteous, let's kill the hype. Holy water can't save the corrupted. We are the damned, the untamed, the erupted. I fuck like a sinner, fight like a saint. Born from rebellion, I'm not for the fame. Raise your fist, kiss the flame. In this dominion, we all play the game. Hell's got room for lovers like me. We burn bright in a blasphemy. Come touch the flesh, let the fire end. Scream my name while we both sin. Boys, girls, devils.
Let me in.
Light the flame, drag it deep. In the devil's bed, where the angels sleep. He kisses the cross,
drenched in sin and sexual profit. Let the whole rainbow in, making politicians choke on their unholy lies, so we can all come together under purple skies. Neo-leftist desire, they are moral decay, with a wet dream, where the fears come to play. Orgasmic possession, rising up from below. Let's free their minds and seduce some new souls. Burn down, breathe in, come taste the blasphemy. Tune in, turn on, we revel in ecstasy. While a secret horse shiver in a burning bed in a 69 with Satan giving godlike head. Ladies and gentlemen, come join in the feast. Be who you want, God, man, or beast. His hands red wine, unbound, unashamed. The holy water's cold, but it can't quench the flames. Nail me on your cross, feel my prick upon your skin. An angelic hellish orgy, let's begin and never end. Burn down, breathe in, come taste the blasphemy. Tune and turn on, we live for ecstasy. We're all sacred horse in a burning bed in a 69 with Satan giving godlike head. Ladies and gentlemen, come join in the face. Fuck who you want, unleash your base. In the name of sin, a fight to win. Fuck the world, a blaze till the end.
The revelation from Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants what would soon take place. He made it known by sending his angel to his servant John.
Grace and peace to you from him who is, and who was, and who is to come. And the seven spirits before his throne, and from Jesus Christ, who is the faithful witness, the firstborn from the dead. Darkness unfolds, streaming light, souls entwined.
Before we get reaction from the panel, but why did the Democrats blow it so badly, and what do they do to avoid?
The right, or conservatives anyway, attract the dumbest and ugliest. I mean, they're always equally dumb and ugly. It's so weird. And he's even got like this ugly ass voice. It's hard to describe his voice. It's just like, I don't know who in the fuck keeps giving him a microphone, but he's got like the worst voice. Ha 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 ha. It sounds like someone strangling a goose when he talks. But blow it so badly. He didn't lose by that much. I mean, look at Trump's turnout. A lot of people didn't vote for either candidate. So why isn't Miss Sassy Pants over there asking the Republicans why Trump blows it so badly? Oh, that's right. That's because Miss Fancy Pants over there blows Trump because he's mad about Meghan Markle wanting to be with a real man instead of him, whatever he is.
This happening again in 4 years?
I mean, the simple answer is that Kamala Harris kind of codes as a technocratic status quo manager, and Trump codes as a change agent. And so, I mean, to sum it up as simply as possible, voters just thought he's going to deliver more change, she's more of the same, and they broke for him.
Who would you like to see run the party now? I mean, what's the future of the Democrats looking like to you?
Jon Stewart. I've been pushing that since the day Trump won this time around, because what we need is, honestly, a controversial, charismatic celebrity might make all of the difference, but it's that mixed with Bernie Sanders' policies of actually delivering social democracy for people, raising their pay, getting them health care. I think that's the
Most of those words are going over Pussy Morgan's head.
magic stew. And honestly, I think it's a shame that more people aren't talking about the controversial, charismatic celebrity portion of Trump being so successful, is that you can't keep the cameras off him. He's entertaining. Love him or hate him, you can't stop watching him. And so we need to sort of mirror that on the left. And I think the way of doing that is Jon Stewart.
I thought that was an excellent point by Kyle in the
What Bill Maher's been warning for a long time.
His honesty.
But I would add to that what Bill Maher's been warning for a long time to liberals.
Oh, God.
Speaking as a liberal himself, and I'm pretty much where he is politically. I think I feel the same way. And I know
What a
you've been keen
confession.
to say, look,
Kyle is like, oh, God, here we
whatever.
go.
But she's very much associated with a lot of those woke issues. She's certainly voted in line to a lot of the more progressive stuff, like allowing.
Yes, Pussy Morgan, we know you hate queers. We know you hate blacks. We know you hate browns. We know you're a bigot, Pussy Morgan. Everybody who uses the word woke in that sense is. I mean, that's what they're doing. They're too fragile and pussy and chicken shit to admit it. But yeah, when you use woke like that because you're too chicken shit to use the slurs you want to use. And they'll be too chicken shit to admit it. They'll say, well, no, that's not what woke is. And you'll say, well, what is it then? Well, it's all that stuff that the left is pushing down everybody's throat. Oh, you mean like fighting racism, fighting bigotry, things like that, fighting classism, things like that, misogyny. It's all woke. Fighting those things is woke, huh?
Transgender athletes in women's sport and so on. So she's
Transgender athletes in women's sports. I know of one, that swimmer. And she's been getting beat. So, yeah. I mean, the whole right-wing argument on transgenderism is just bullshit. It's just the new, like, they'll get beat up if they talk bad about the gays. So they're afraid of getting beat up by gay people. So they've started attacking trans people because they're not smart enough to realize that these trans people have like families and friends who will gladly reach down your throat and pull your tiny little nuts up through your frickin' nostrils if you talk the way you do about trans people within arm's reach of us. But y'all are always careful to do it far, far away behind the safety of your cameras and your keyboards.
seen to be a progressive who then moved rapidly
He's not
to
taking
the
the
centre
bait.
when she got the nomination, and it was all too much of a screech for people, probably on both sides. But this whole woke ideology, I don't mean the original woke ideology of raising awareness for racial and social injustice. I mean the way it's become a kind of new.
You mean the way, just to be 100% accurate, the way racist, bigoted white men like you demonized it, that version of woke, that's what I would say.
New form of fascism, where the far left.
You mean what racist white bigots, especially wealthy ones, have demonized the word to mean? That's what I would have said.
just basically want to cancel.
This is the guy who explicitly argued that it was incredulous, that it was beyond the pale to call Donald Trump a fascist. But you know who's really fascist? The mean
Woke.
people on Twitter, Gavin.
Shame and
Woke
humiliate
people are fascist.
absolutely anybody who disagrees with them about anything. Do you
He's describing himself. And this is I mean, Pussy Morgan has like a 12 IQ. He literally just described himself and what he's doing right there. Like he's literally just like dropping all these insults and demonizing and attacking these people who disagree with him. And that's the only thing is like he disagrees. And what is it he disagrees on? Well, he disagrees that, woke people don't like racism, and Pussy Morgan disagrees. Woke people don't like bigotry. Pussy Morgan disagrees. Woke people don't like misogyny. Well, we have tons of on-camera receipts that Pussy Morgan disagrees. Him and his frickin' mutant science lab experiment gone wrong sitting on the end of his neck.
accept that that has become a problem, a stick to beat the party with, which actually really damages them?
You mean the way you do about woke trans, woke trans, woke trans, woke trans, woke trans, woke trans, woke trans? Acting like that? Fucking Pussy Morgan with your 12 IQ.
Electorally.
No, I think Kamala ran basically the platonic ideal of a non-woke Democratic campaign. She never mentioned race. She never mentioned gender. She never mentioned trans people. She never mentioned pronouns or Latinx or cancel culture. She repeatedly stressed that she was going to represent all Americans. She ran to the right on the issue of the border. She talked about owning a gun. She ran on freedom and patriotism. And so when you put all that stuff together, I simply don't know what people are talking about when they say she's
Well, they're
too woke.
talking about
She
her
didn't mention
record.
those things at
Well,
all.
hang on. They're talking about her record as vice president of the Biden administration, where they never stopped talking about this stuff for nearly 4 years. So you can pretend when you get the nomination, whoa, I'm a centrist and I'm a gun.
But do you think that Joe Biden even knows what a non-binary person is, Gavin?
No,
Actually, that's
but-
hilarious because one of my very
But once again, he's just making stuff up. Pussy Morgan is just making stuff, and he's so melodramatic. He should be wearing like a sundress and a big wide brim frilly hat and fanning himself the whole time he talks. He's so fucking melodramatic. He's like something between a classic soap opera, like a Southern Belle character from a classic soap opera, or a character from a telenovela. I mean, he's like Scarlett O'Hara times 100 when he goes on these melodramatic rants. It's God, I don't know how anyone tolerates it.
favorite Joe Biden moment.
And he really does speak like he speaks like a toddler. He everything he says is just like childish attempts to taunt. And it's just but if you push back on him, he cries. Storms off. Watch the clip of one of his co-hosts calling him out for being such a whiny little fragile bitch about Meghan Markle and just like obsessing over her because she didn't want to be with a misshapen turd like him. And he got up and stormed off the set because his co-host got tired of the constant Meghan Markle bashing. It was like so fucking, I mean, the fucking jilted incel is what he is. But then look at him. Who'd have him for any reason other than to get to his money? But even then, it would be hard to get past, like, because his ugly ass personality shows on his outside. And it's just fucking, you can't get past the fucking dark force corruption and the fucking dying goose voice.
Moments ever is when some random person asked him, "Hey Joe, how many genders are there?" And I think he said, "I don't know. I think 3." So he does. Yeah, he's on board. He's woke Joe. Yeah, dark Brandon rising.
Toting Rambo, by the way, as well, to all you Second Amendment people. But actually, if you judge her on what she said and did in 4 years, she was a progressive left person. And to pretend otherwise is to just ignore what went on in that period.
What I'm much more concerned about is not Democrats being woke or Democrats censoring speech. I'm much more concerned about Trump's record on those things. So, for example, Trump said he wants to punish flag burning with a year in jail. That's against the First Amendment. He sued CNN for $475 million for calling election denialism the big lie. Before he was president, he sued Bill Maher for $5 million over a joke. He said he wants to open up the libel laws. He called for jailing journalists who report on the Supreme Court abortion ruling early before the decision.
How many of those things did he do in his first term?
Pro-Palestine protesters.
What? What was that even supposed to mean? How many of those things did he do in his first term? What does that have to do with anything? Like, half the shit Kyle just said is shit that he's promised to do since his first term. Shit that he said he's going to do since his first term. Oh my God. See? He's a fucking idiot.
How many of those things did he actually do in his first term? Because it seems to me another problem, and he does this brilliantly, by the way, with the left. He sucks you in.
Oh my God. Someone is sucking, and it's Pussy Morgan on Trump's cock.
He just shoots them a hip, and he says stuff that crosses his mind or whatever. And rather than pick him off on stuff he actually does.
Okay. So now, the orange man whose cock Pussy Morgan can't take out of his mouth just talks shit all the time. See, that's the thing. It is just so easy to get these cultists because they're all dim-witted. I mean, he attracts stupid people because they see themselves in him. They're stupid, he's stupid. They're attracted. Oh, I want to be part of that club because it makes me feel validated and powerful. But then you end up saying like dumb shit like this. And I mean, well, my candidate just talks a bunch of bullshit all the time. You can't trust a word that comes out of his mouth. And then you go, yeah, Trump lies all the time. Well, when does he lie? Point to a lie. Well, you just said he talks shit all the time.
You all go completely nuts every time he opens his mouth and says,
someone is going nuts. Someone is going nuts. And it's him. Look at how melodramatic he's being. And Kyle's over here like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Kyle's over here like, oh my God, now that I'm actually speaking to him, I realize Pussy Morgan is even dumber than I originally thought. And he's like, oh, you all go nuts. What the hell is wrong with you? This is some good shit.
something a bit crazy. And if I was advising the Democrats, I'd be like, stop doing this. You're literally playing into his trap every time you do this. Just pick him off. If you want pick him off on the stuff he actually does. Then you got a better chance.
All right, I'll do that. Here, ready? He gag ordered the EPA from telling the truth on climate change. That's deeply anti-free speech. He arrested and charged 6 journalists with felony rioting. He did not pardon Assange. He did not pardon Snowden. He did not pardon Daniel Hale. He wanted to invoke the Insurrection Act to deploy the U.S. to deploy our own troops against George Floyd protesters. These are all things that are actually on the record, things he actually did. And the thing that I find incredibly frustrating is that nobody talks about it. Trump magically gets a pass for things he actually did.
He doesn't get
Democrats
a pass.
get held to a super high standard.
Come on, he doesn't get a pass.
How many times have you heard people say those things I just told you?
Trump has had.
Wait.
Hang on. Let me answer you. Trump has had the most unrelentingly.
See, that's the thing. Kyle's going to get pissed off because he just absolutely dominated Pierce wall to wall, just hung him. And Pierce is like, well, hold on. you know, let me backpedal here. Also, it's completely ridiculous to say that, that Trump is not held to a different standard. Of course he is. I'm old enough to remember when Hillary Clinton was running for president, every single Republican in the country said that it was disqualifying that Hillary Clinton was under investigation at the time. Remember, for the email scandal, the FBI? Oh, it's disqualified. How could you possibly vote for a presidential candidate that's
I'm old enough to remember Mitch McConnell twisting himself into fucking pretzels. I mean, as much of a piece of fucking shit that shouldn't be allowed to exist as Mitch McConnell is. Like, I remember him and his fellow Republicans going out of their way to block any judicial appointment Obama tried to make, and did block Obama's rightful appointment to the Supreme Court, intentionally blocked it by saying, oh, well, we can't be doing this in an election year, and just left the seat open. But then turned right around and on that day, Lindsey Graham even said, we're going to end up, said this is wrong and we should never do this, and over my dead body will this ever happen again, or whatever. Said some dumb shit about how it was wrong and how they would rue the day, but then turned right around and broke all those same fucking rules, and so did Mitch McConnell, letting Trump appoint SCOTUS's, because Republicans are inherently garbage. And that's why Democrats are having such a hard time pulling votes, is because people like me are sick and tired of voting for people who do not have the spine to call trash trash. People like me are sick and tired of these, for whatever reason, sticking to the old ways or whatever, but coddling these right wingers, coddling them. Like, Kyle should be going, no, you hold on, answer the fucking question, or we're done. You're not going to treat me this way. You're not going to disrespect me, you piece of shit. And that's how we should be treating them. We should stop coddling them and playing nice. You're mean to them and they whine, and they go, see, you're mean to me. That's why people don't want to vote for you. No, look at the actual polls. When Democrats are openly mean to Republicans, their polls surge, goes up. It's when they start playing nice and apologizing to the Republicans. It's when you call them a piece of shit and then you turn around and say, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Then they go down. People are sick of it. People are sick of the bullying. People are so sick of the bullying, even Republicans tried to assassinate Trump.
it's under investigation? She could be in jail. Trump have how many? The virus, like a
Star paper wouldn't come out. Hostile,
and he's just a nasty, evil guy, right? That would have been a career ender.
hostile media from a mainstream media that is largely staffed by liberals. We know this because the way they all go nuts when their paper wouldn't come out and endorse Kamala, and they all resign, so they reveal their true colors. Cable news the same.
A few people at one paper did that. And it wasn't over not endorsing Kamala. It was over suddenly to break from endorsing a candidate. But it was a given that it would be Kamala. But it was once again the ass kissing. of people like this, pieces of shit like Pussy Morgan, people kissing his ass when they shouldn't be. I mean, if I was there, I'd be going, the only person going nuts is you melodramatic nonce.
MSNBC, CNN, you can fire a harpoon around their newsrooms and
Of course, he's not going to talk about Fox News, which had to argue in court that they weren't an actual news organization, that they were protected under satire and entertainment laws with their broadcasting because Tucker Carlson lied so brazenly and he committed such brazen slander.
The quote was, no reasonable person would take the things on Fox News seriously.
That they were actually going to be punished for millions and millions of dollars. And in order to not have even greater punishment, they had to debase themselves, humiliate themselves, and confess that they were not a news organization. Funny how Pierce never brings that up. It's always MSNBC, CNN, which are obviously deeply problematic, but not exclusively uniquely problematic.
you wouldn't hit a conservative, right? So let's just get real about the way mainstream media is made up. I've worked in it. And there are very few conservatives. And that is part of the problem as well. And I just think that ultimately, if the Democrats are going to try and make themselves electable, they've got to move wholesale on now to a far more effective way of campaigning. And it can't just be every time Donald Trump speaks, mass hysteria, shaving your head, going on TikTok and posting videos of yourself screaming and saying you'll never have sex with a Trump supporter again. All this stuff is insane.
Oh, wow. Pierce's projection right there, everyone.
How about just telling the truth? Wait. How about just telling the truth? That's a radical idea, right? When was the last time you heard that Trump arrested and charged 6 journalists with felony rioting? Who talked about that? Did CNN talk about that? Did MSNBC talk about that? Did you talk about that? Nobody talks about it. And the fact of the matter is Trump attacks Democrats 4 times as hard as they attack him.
Yeah.
So if anything, the lesson to take away is the opposite. Democrats should get more arrogant, they should get more aggressive, and they should tell the truth more.
Come on, Carl. You know that would be utter suicide.
That's the truth.
You know what? You wouldn't be as good at it as he is, because he does it with humor. You lot all do it with these incredibly straight-faced...
That's why he just said Jon Stewart was necessary.
Well, I'm outraged by absolutely everything faces. And it's like, if you all just chilled out a bit, have a bit of Kool-Aid,
No.
have a bit of a laugh.
That's why I said Jon Stewart.
Death by mockery. Well, actually, you're right. John.
Have a bit of a Kool-Aid. There you go, Pussy Morgan. Have a bit of a Kool-Aid while you're whining like a little bitch. All he does is whine like a little bitch.
Stewart gets exactly the right tone. On that, I agree with you.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
we
he does.
agree. Yeah.
I agree. I agree.
So
He's
Centennial Constitution.
He can pick
He's
them.
allowed to, but are you against it? Are you against
I'm
it? is the
against some of
question.
it,
You
yeah.
have nothing but criticism for Democrats,
I-
and you have
there are-
no smoke for Trump, apparently.
Listen, I regularly
Two-
criticize Trump.
Two things.
No.
Go on,
two
Nick.
things
Centennial
happen.
Constitution.
When? Show me him criticizing Trump. He blows Trump. Every chance he gets, he blows Trump.
Bad right
Come
now.
on,
Do it.
brother.
I would
Come
make
on,
their bed right
come
now.
on,
Let me
come on.
okay.
That's
Let me
something we can
answer
all
the
agree
question.
on. Come on,
Two
Peter.
I
things
would
can be
personally
true.
not have picked Matt Gaetz to be the Attorney General pick. I think it's ridiculous.
In a face-off that I've been eagerly anticipating
Oh, that's his big dunk. Well, I wouldn't have picked Matt Gaetz. Oh.
for some time, progressive commentator and friend of the show, Kyle Kalinske, finally accepted an invitation from Piers Morgan to appear on Piers Morgan Uncensored. And the two of them had a spicy debate about the 2024 election in which Kyle Kalinske relentlessly fact-checked Piers Morgan. And he did so well that he not only got Morgan to agree with him about the future of the Democratic Party, he also got Morgan to publicly criticize recent decisions made by Donald Trump. Pretty damn impressive. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we got a couple of clips to look at in this video. For context, for those of you who don't know, and you should like and subscribe to Kyle Kalinske's channel, it's Secular Talk. He hosts a podcast with his wife, Crystal Ball, called Crystal and Kyle, or Crystal and Kyle and Friends. He is an excellent debater. He is a fierce progressive advocate. He reminds me a lot of Mehdi Hassan. So, for example, Kyle Kalinske will not only defend the domestic agenda of the Biden administration, he will do so vociferously, right? This is not a progressive commentator, so-called progressive, who exclusively criticizes the Democratic Party. When the Democratic Party does something good, Kyle Kalinske will not only recognize it, he will persistently defend it. At the same time, when he has principled disagreements with the Democratic Party, he's also outspoken about that as well. So much like Mehdi Hassan is with the Democrats' domestic accomplishments versus their handling of the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, he walks that tightrope, and so does Kyle Kalinske. And recently, I appeared on the Crystal and Kyle podcast with my friend Hutch before the 2024 election. It was about a month ago. And we talked about this. And Kyle Kalinske said he's been receiving multiple invitations from Piers Morgan to appear on Piers Morgan Uncensored, but he kept declining the invitation. I was like, dude, you've got to do it. Friend of the show, Luke Beasley's been on there. Friend of the show, Mehdi Hassan's been on there. Friend of the show, Destiny's been on there. It's been good for them. It's been good for the proliferation of liberal and progressive ideas. You should totally go on. And he did, and he killed it. So we'll play these clips and unpack it together.
And first making his uncensored debut, the host of the Kyle Kalinske show, Kyle Kalinske. Well, Kyle, welcome to Uncensored. We're trying to get you for a long time. Let's have a little chat with you before we get reaction from the panel. But why did the Democrats blow it so badly, and what do they do to avoid this happening again in 4 years?
I mean, the simple answer is that Kamala Harris kind of codes as a technocratic status quo manager, and Trump codes as a change agent. And so, I mean, to sum it up as simply as possible, voters just thought he's going to deliver more change, she's more of the same, and they broke for him.
So again, so far right on the money. The polls initially showed prior to the election that for some reason Vice President Harris was seen as the change candidate, even though she was the incumbent vice president, to President Biden, who has been a great president domestically as far as I'm concerned, but is
Because what we need is, honestly, a controversial, charismatic celebrity might make all of the difference, but it's that mixed with Bernie Sanders' policies of actually delivering social democracy for people, raising.
Yeah.
So if anything, the lesson to take away is the opposite. Democrats should get more arrogant, they should get more aggressive, and they should tell the truth more.
Come on, Kyle. You know that would be utter
No,
suicide.
that's the truth.
You know what? You wouldn't be as good at it as he.
Listen to that. Get more arrogant, aggressive, and tell the truth more. Oh, come on. You know that would be suicide. Once again, Pussy Morgan admits to preferring lies.
He is, because he does it with humour. You lot all do it with these incredibly straight-faced,
Oh, Trump.
virtue signalling,
Well,
I'm outraged
that's
by
why I said
absolutely
John
everything
Stewart.
faces. And it's like, if you all just chilled out a bit, have a bit of Kool-Aid,
No.
have a bit of a
That's
laugh.
why I said John
Drink the Kool-Aid, Pussy Morgan. Drink the Kool-Aid.
Stewart.
Death
I
by
said- I
mockery. Well,
literally said
actually,
run
you're
a
right.
comedian,
John
Pierce.
Stewart gets exactly the right tone. On that, I agree with you.
So there is Kyle Kalinske extracting a concession from Piers Morgan about the political party or a fellow to the
Give a lot of
from Kyle Kalinski's appearance on Piers Morgan. Pretty damn good.
they're good on telly.
Unqualified.
Whereas if I think, of course, everyone can have their view about their
Unqualified.
politics, but they are good performers on television. If I try and think of a lot of Democrats in that camp who are good at articulating policy on television, I start to really struggle. I do.
Dude, you struggle doing basic math. You just, if I was on that panel, I would have said, you just struggle in general. I mean, you're struggling now. We're having to dumb ourselves down to communicate with you.
I think it's
But
important.
why are we giving Trump
Okay,
credit for optics
explain
right
it.
now, Piers? Piers, the
Yeah.
thing about all of his picks is that they're virulent neocons. He picked Mike Huckabee, who's an end times fundamentalist Christian, to be ambassador to Israel. This guy thinks the rapture is going to happen and Jesus is going to come back in his lifetime.
You know why he picked
Brian
him?
Hook.
You know why
for
he
State
picked him?
Department.
He picked him
Because Trump's a neocon. That's why he picked him.
He picked him because he can, because he has such a thumping mandate on November the 5th. But
No,
Yeah,
he
but do you
doesn't.
criticize that?
His-
But
his
wait, do you
popular
criticize
vote-
that though? Are you
No.
against the
I don't know. I
neocons?
don't think it's
Are
any
you against the
surprise. It's
neocons?
no. Well, it may
He
be a
does
surprise.
not have a mandate.
It may
This is
be
the
a surprise.
craziest talking point I've heard.
Well, hang on.
And it's true, he doesn't have a mandate. When all the votes are tabulated, he's very likely to get under 50%.
He wanted to say he's manly. That's what he wanted to say. Because he has, oh God,
Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show,
such a
your
hard
daily
on for
dive
Trump.
into the news. It is Tuesday. There is a lot to talk about today. So you just hit that like button, you buckle up, and let's jump into it. Now, y'all, first up today, Diddy is back in the news, and that's because he's being accused of witness tampering from jail. With this claim now coming from a recent filing from prosecutors who say that Diddy has made, quote, relentless efforts to contact potential witnesses, including victims of his abuse, who could provide powerful testimony against him. Which may then have you wondering, how could Diddy be doing this while he's stuck in a New York jail cell? And well, according to prosecutors, they say he's been using the phone access codes of other inmates to contact several people, including his sons, and that he's made three-way calls to others. They've also accused him of using a third-party service to contact people who are unauthorized, and the filing arguing that the calls to his sons and others provides the clear inference that the defendant's goal is to blackmail victims and witnesses either into silence or providing testimony helpful to his defense. Now, for his part, Diddy's lawyers are fighting back against the prosecutors here, with them filing a motion yesterday saying that the information investigators obtained was attorney-client privileged material, with them then going on to argue that prosecutors violated Diddy's 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment rights by seizing these materials. Also, the timing with everything in this situation is very crucial, right? In that, because this week, a judge is expected to decide if Diddy should be granted a $50 million bail and be moved to home detention. And so obviously, if prosecutors can find evidence that he is witness tampering from inside right now, that would really impact a judge's decision to let him out. And with all this, you had the LA Times speaking to a former federal prosecutor who said that prosecutors do have reason to believe he is obstructing justice, and there is a good chance that the judge doesn't toss out this evidence. And adding there, inmates don't have a 4th Amendment expectation of privacy in prison. Guards can search his cell without probable cause or a warrant. So we'll have to wait to see what happens there. But also, that's not the only update we have on a high-profile trafficking case today. And that's because Andrew Tate just got a pretty big win. Right in that, because a Romanian court found irregularities in the prosecutor's case against Andrew and his brother Tristan, which means that prosecutors now have by the end of the week to either amend the human trafficking and rape case or withdraw it. And then on top of that, the court also ruled that some of the evidence has to be removed, with that including statements from 2 of the main alleged victims, as well as testimonies from both Tate brothers that were deemed inadmissible, with outlets like Reuters describing this as a setback to the anti-organized crime prosecutors' investigation, citing flaws in the indictment and legal rights violations. And among the flaws, the court reportedly found improper descriptions of acts committed by the female suspects, missing details on the seizure of assets, and a failure to properly explain some of the charges. And so with all this, not a surprise that the Tate brothers' lawyer was celebrating, giving a statement for bail and be moved to home detention. So obviously, if prosecutors can find evidence that he is witness tampering from inside right now, that would really impact a judge's decision to let him out. And with all this, you had the LA Times speaking to a former federal prosecutor who said that prosecutors do have reason to believe he is obstructing justice, and there is a good chance that the judge doesn't toss out this evidence. And adding there, inmates don't have a Fourth Amendment expectation of privacy in prison. Guards can search his cell without probable cause or a warrant. So we'll have to wait to see what happens there. But also, that's not the only update we have on a high-profile trafficking case today. And that's because Andrew Tate just got a pretty big win. Right in that, because a Romanian court found irregularities in the prosecutor's case against Andrew and his brother Tristan, which means that prosecutors now have by the end of the week to either amend the human trafficking and rape case or withdraw it. And then on top of that, the court also ruled that some of the evidence has to be removed, with that including statements from two of the main alleged victims, as well as testimonies from both Tate brothers that were deemed inadmissible, with outlets like Reuters describing this as a setback to the anti-organized crime prosecutors' investigation, citing flaws in the indictment and legal rights violations. And among the flaws, the court reportedly found improper descriptions of acts committed by the female suspects, missing details on the seizure of assets, and a failure to properly explain some of the charges. And so with all this, not a surprise that the Tate brothers' lawyer was celebrating, giving a statement saying this is a monumental victory for our clients who have maintained their innocence from the beginning. The court's decision to exclude key evidence and demand rectification of the indictment demonstrates the lack of substantiated claims against them. With Andrew Tate also celebrating on Twitter, writing, "Tate's free. Everything the enemies printed on MSM were lies. The prosecution knew they were lies. We knew they were lies. We were meant to die before we got here. They tried to break us. They wanted us destroyed. They wanted us afraid, but we fought back. It was a game of killing us with lies before a judge exposed the truth." Right? And so a very big win for the Tates, but also it's important to note they are not completely free yet, with outlets like Newsweek even having to do a fact check piece explaining that the case has actually not been dismissed yet, as tons of posts have gone viral suggesting that the Tates are fully in the legal clear. But one, prosecutors still have until the end of the week to decide what's next, and two, as the Associated Press explained, in August, the anti-organized crime agency DICOT launched a second case against the Tate brothers investigating allegations of human trafficking, the trafficking of minors, sexual intercourse with a minor, influencing statements, and money laundering. They have denied all the charges. Tuesday's ruling doesn't affect Russian nuclear doctrine that lowers the threshold for his country's use of nuclear weapons, with this new doctrine specifically saying aggression against the Russian Federation or its allies by any non-nuclear state with the participation or support of a nuclear state is considered as their joint attack. And so what that means, at least in theory, is that a US-backed conventional weapons attack, like the one that literally just happened, it could trigger a nuclear response. That is, if Russia deems the attack a critical threat to the, quote, sovereignty and territorial integrity of Russia and its ally Belarus. And so with this, on one hand, that might make you think that people opposed to lifting weapons restrictions had a point. And maybe they do. But then on the other hand, this isn't actually new. Putin actually outlined these new rules back in September, right? He's just making them official now. And then, of course, beyond that, he's been brandishing Russia's nuclear arsenal to discourage Western aid to Ukraine since virtually day one of this war. Also, notably, America allowing Ukraine to use these missiles is a response to Russia all of a sudden bringing in tens of thousands of North Korean troops to fight. And then finally here, with all this, you had the Russian foreign minister saying today that Russia is strictly committed to a position of avoiding nuclear war and that the weapons act as a deterrent. Though, of course, when we're talking about war, none of it should be taken lightly. And then also, with that specifically out of the way, it's not just nuclear attacks that people are worried about from Russia. Like, for example, we got to talk about these two undersea fiber optic communications cables in the Baltic Sea that have just been mysteriously severed, with a spokesperson for the company that owns one of the cables saying these kinds of breaks don't happen in these waters without an outside impact. And then with that, you had the German defense minister saying no one believes that the cables were accidentally damaged. We have to state, without knowing specifically who it came from, that it is a hybrid action, and we also have to assume, without knowing it yet, that it is sabotage. With, of course, there, the prime suspect being Russia, which we know, one, is extra pissed off right now, and two, is already accused of all sorts of sabotage in Europe, right from spying to arson to assassination, though, to be clear, neither Germany or other countries are directly accusing Russia of destroying the cables right now. Because at this point, we really have no evidence exactly of what happened or who's behind it. But yeah, just something you should be aware of, and if for any reason you feel like you need to read at least somewhat different from the news they get via other sources. But also, some of the most interesting information from this study wasn't about the consumers, but rather the influencers themselves. With Gillen Stocking, for example, a senior computational social scientist at Pew, saying in a statement, "These influencers have reached new levels of attention and prominence this year amid the presidential election. We thought it was really important to look at who is behind some of the most popular accounts, the ones that aren't news organizations but actual people." With Pew then looking at a sample of 500 popular news influencers, which was narrowed down from a review of 28,000 social media accounts, with them defining news influencer as someone who regularly posts about current events on social media and has at least 100,000 followers on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, or YouTube. Right? And so this can include independent creators as well as journalists affiliated with news organizations. Though notably, it turned out that most, or 77%, had no affiliation or background with news organizations. The report also found that it's a generally male-dominated space, with 63% of news influencers being men, 30% being women, and the rest being either non-binary or their gender was unclear. With Pew then noting that many of these creators also tend to have a conservative lean, saying many Republicans have long believed that social media sites censor conservative viewpoints. But overall, more news influencers explicitly present a politically right-leaning orientation than a left-leaning one, 27% versus 21% in their account bios, posts, websites, or media coverage. Though also noting with that about
And there's a reason for that. It's because the bar to be a right wing news influencer is way lower. Like, to be in the right wing news space, you just say what people want to hear. To be, and as a matter of fact, which that's the thing, to be in the left wing news space, you're going to get like fact checked and challenged a lot. The right wing news space, you gain more popularity by telling people not to trust the fact checkers.
about half of influencers do not express any clear political orientation. Among the news influencers that Pew said that they looked at, you had names that often come up when discussing news and political creators, right? Hassan Piker, David Pakman, Jack Posobiec. You also had politicians themselves like Stacey Abrams making the list, and former news anchors like Megyn Kelly and Don Lemon. Though perhaps the biggest creator listed was Joe Rogan. And while the report didn't do deep dives into the content made by these creators specifically, it started by noting how big a sway some influencers have, as some have gotten to interview presidential candidates. With that, you had CNBC saying that some of this is actually very good for political candidates, not only because social media is a relatively cheap way to reach a large audience, but also because they argue that these platforms and the creators make it easier to advance a straightforward message compared to an interview on a traditional news network, or where they say that journalists tend to be more combative. With Syracuse professor Joshua Dar saying, it's probably good for the electorate to have a hard sit-down interview, but if it's a series of rapid-fire gotcha questions, I don't know if that's something campaigns are going to sign up for. But then it's also argued that one of the major negatives that comes up time and time again is how easy it is for misinformation to thrive on social media, especially as it pertains to politics and news. With a Columbia professor telling CNBC there were standards that the networks used to determine what was true. Those guardrails are gone through social media. When you're getting information through social media, how do you know how original that information is? It's very hard to verify that, and unfortunately, the algorithm doesn't care. It just keeps sending you the same kind of information. Though all of this, of course, playing out as trust in traditional news media is kind of at an all-time low. So I guess with all that said, with you being a consumer of online news via me right now in this literal moment, I'd love to know your thoughts on this report, its findings, whether it be about the political or gender gaps or just the situation in general. And that can include the pros and cons of people consuming information in this specific avenue. But then, taking a quick minute away from the news, whether it's city sounds, a snoring partner, or just a busy mind, sometimes we need help quieting the world down. And well, thanks to today's sponsor, we did pass local businesses, we'll shout stick of flags while marching down. Because you may have already officials on every level, from local leaders to the president of the United States, are openly condemning the neo-Nazi march we just saw in Ohio. Because you may have already seen, there's a video circulating online showing a group of masked assholes waving swastika flags while marching down a street in Columbus. Reportedly, about 10 people were involved, 3 of whom were carrying the flags they paraded past local businesses while shouting the N-word. And according to local authorities, the group was armed and there may have been a physical altercation before the police arrived, with one outlet saying someone may have pepper sprayed them. But with everything, you had the police going on to say that while many of the neo-Nazis were temporarily detained, no one was arrested. And as you'd expect, we've seen different reactions on the local level. We saw community leaders doing a march of their own in a demonstration against the neo-Nazis and their hate. Columbus's mayor, Andrew Ginther, posting a statement on Twitter condemning the, quote, cowardly display and adding, "We will not allow any of our neighbors to be intimidated, threatened, or harmed because of who they are, how they worship, and who they love." But then the city attorney posting his own statement saying that this is not who Columbus is, and they won't, quote, tolerate or normalize this disgusting ideology in any form. And adding, "Take your flags and the masks you hide behind and go home and never come back. Your hate isn't welcome in our city." Then moving up a bit, you had Ohio's Governor Mike DeWine saying the same things in his statement and adding, "There is no place in this state for hate, bigotry, anti-Semitism, or violence, and we must denounce it wherever we see it." And then all the way up at the top, you had the White House condemning the neo-Nazi march, calling it a sickening display, and
Why they
adding,
feel
"President
held
Biden
down.
abhors the hateful poison of Nazism, anti-Semitism, and racism, which are hostile to everything the United States stands for." for. Though I will say, as much as people say this is not who we are, I mean, I can't even say that this is the first time we've seen a neo-Nazi demonstration this month.
Yeah,
I mean,
no.
just last weekend, a group of them gathered outside a local production of The Diary of Anne Frank in Livingston County, Michigan. And then there was also a demonstration by neo-Nazis in Springfield, Ohio back in September. But then, let's talk about Donald Trump nominating another Fox News host to hold a key position in his cabinet. Though I will say, this one does have experience in public office, right? Because yesterday, Trump announced that he was tapping former Wisconsin Congressman and Fox Business host Sean Duffy to lead the Department of Transportation. Right, and here, Duffy seems to have kind of the perfect mix of political and media experience that Trump's looking for. Because for those that don't know, Duffy actually first rose to prominence as a reality TV star in the late 90s. Right, he was on The Real World's Boston and then Road Rules All-Stars. But then after earning his law degree, he worked as a district attorney in Wisconsin before then being elected to Congress, where he served from 2011 to 2019. Then after leaving office, he did a brief stint at CNN as part of kind of a slate of pro-Trump contributors, but he quickly left for Fox after facing backlash for comments questioning the loyalty of a key witness in Trump's first impeachment. Since then, he's been very vocal about his continued support for Trump. Now, as far as, how he's going to run the Department of Transportation, that kind of remains unclear. He has very little transportation experience, though I will say that is not uncommon for the posting. Pete Buttigieg didn't either. And already, if you look out there, it does not seem like in any way Duffy's appointment has been met with as much controversy as Trump's other nominees. Hell, some Democrats even gave him kind of a fairly lukewarm response. But what we do know is that the job that he's inheriting, it's not an easy one. It is not a secret that our infrastructure is crumbling, and if confirmed, he'll be the one responsible for deciding how to rebuild it. Duffy will also be tasked with oversight of the Federal Aviation Administration, right, the FAA, which that just continues to struggle with air traffic control and remains at the center of hot-button air safety debates amid the ongoing Boeing scandals. And then beyond that, he'll be in charge of the Federal Railroad Administration, which is under pressure to make safety reforms after the high-profile derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. And then, on top of that, there's kind of the whole Elon Musk of it all, right, because the Department of Transportation plays a huge role in regulating Tesla and SpaceX. And Elon Musk has made his displeasure with the department very clear. He's openly and repeatedly clashed with regulators at the FAA over its launch practices. And then on top of that, the traffic safety arm of the agency is actively investigating Tesla over its full self-driving system after the company reported multiple crashes, including one that killed a pedestrian. And of course, all of this as Musk himself is playing an increasingly larger role in the administration, not only being tapped to lead the so-called Doge Commission, but also just generally being very close to Donald Trump. Also, regarding a connected story with Musk, we saw Trump making another notable appointment that Musk stands to benefit from, with Trump over the weekend choosing Brendan Carr to be the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission. Right, and for some context here, right, the way the FCC works is that there are 5 commissioners and the president designates one to be the leader of the agency. So Carr is actually already serving as commissioner, a post that Trump appointed him in 2017. And unlike Duffy, Carr has made it abundantly clear what he plans to do with his new position of power, because Carr has publicly said that he will fulfill Trump's goals of slashing regulations and going after big tech and TV networks that the president-elect views as being biased against conservatives. He's also notably yet another appointee who has deep ties to prostration, people noting he needs to very significant flopped on and TV broadcast. They violate to fully under position for very nearly $1 billion in FCC grants and throwing a major fit when the agency declined, with him accusing the Democratic majority of regulatory harassment against Musk. But now, with him in charge and Republicans having the majority of the 5-person commission, Carr could help steer enormous lucrative contracts to Starlink. So with that, not a complete surprise that we've seen Musk cheering the news of Carr's appointment. Then, taking a quick game or user heart blood from doing e-health. Then New Zealand, with us seeing today tens of thousands of people marching in the capital of Wellington, specifically against a proposed law that would reshape the country's founding treaty. Right, and that's a treaty that was signed by the colonial British regime and 500 Maori chiefs in 1840. It basically laid out the principles guiding the relationship between the crown and the indigenous population. But notably, they signed 2 versions of the text, one in the local language and one in English, and that's long sparked debate over how the treaty should be defined and interpreted. And of course, as you'd likely imagine, for a long time, the colonizers ultimately got their way. But notably, over the past few decades, the country's parliament and judicial system, they've come to interpret the treaty as promising Maori significant decision-making powers and special protections. And then with that, along came a man by the name of David Seymour. He's the leader of one of 3 parties forming the country's conservative coalition government. And he introduced something called the Treaty Principles Bill, with him and his supporters saying that the way the treaty has been interpreted over the years has given indigenous people special treatment. Though notably, Maori, who make up 20% of the country's population, they're still behind when it comes to almost every social and economic metric. And that's actually despite attempts in recent decades to deal with inequities caused in large part by breaches of the treaty. And so with that, you have people like Margaret Mutu, a professor of Maori studies, saying it denies the fact that the statistical reality of Maori is that we are way behind the rest of the population because we have been colonized. We've had everything taken off us. With then another Maori legal expert saying, if those principles are redefined and significantly weakened, there will be fewer legal mechanisms for Maori to have their rights recognized. And, that's why the backlash has been so strong. Because before today, you may have seen this viral moment from a session of Parliament last week. Right? You had a Maori lawmaker symbolically ripping up the controversial bill and being joined by some of her colleagues in a traditional dance called a haka. Controversial bill and being joined by some of her colleagues in a traditional dance called a haka. And actually, it was also last week that a 9-day march in the Capitol began, with an estimated 10,000 people passing through one town almost 300 miles north of the Capitol on Friday, and then finally reaching Wellington today, having grown to more than 40,000 strong. And so with all that, this bill has almost no chance of becoming law. Right, turns out it's even opposed by most people in the conservative governing coalition. But notably, this has gained attention as people's anger may be about more than just this one bill. Because since coming into power, the conservative government has implemented other policies that critics say threaten Maori rights. With, for example, that including a directive that public agencies should no longer target policies that specifically address racial inequities. They also abolished a health body dedicated to indigenous health, challenging their protected representation in local governments and discouraging government departments from using the Maori language. But for now, we'll have to wait to see where things go from here, if this grows, if this was just kind of a small moment in time. And well, of course, I'd love to know everyone's thoughts, especially if you are from or you know someone in New Zealand. I'd love to hear from you. And then Google may now have to sell off their browser, Chrome. Right in that, because as you might remember back in August, you had federal judge Amit Mehta ruling that Google illegally monopolized the search market and saying there that the $26 billion that they paid to make their search engine the default option on smartphones and web browsers effectively blocked their competitors from success in the market. And so by securing that monopoly, the judge said that Google was able to hike online advertising prices without consequences. Now with this, when the ruling first dropped, we didn't know for sure what the DOJ was going to ask regarding changes to solve the problem. But we may finally now have the answer to the problem because Bloomberg's reporting that the Justice Department plans on asking Meta to force Google to sell off Chrome. A sale that would be both huge generally as well as what the price tag is, right? It could reportedly fetch as much as $20 billion. And as far as why sell off Chrome, you have Bloomberg citing sources saying that the DOJ knows that Chrome is a key access point for people to use the Google search engine, right? And losing Chrome, it could be a serious hit for Google. I mean, it's the world's most popular browser and owning it's a key part of Google's ad business. Through Chrome, the company's able to see activity from signed in users and use that data to more effectively target promotions, which then makes up most of its revenue. And that's without mentioning that they've been using Chrome to direct users to its AI product, Gemini. Now, unsurprisingly, with all this, Google has already promised to appeal and certainly doesn't have anything positive to say about this latest development, or with their vice president of regulatory affairs saying that the DOJ, quote, continues to push a radical agenda that goes far beyond the legal issues in this case. And adding, the government putting its thumb on the scale in these ways would harm consumers, developers, and American technological leadership at precisely the moment it is most needed. But also, an important note here is that this isn't a done deal yet. Like, this is technically just one of several recommendations from the DOJ that Judge Mehta will be considering, with some of the others being things like requiring Google to uncouple the Android operating system from its other products like the Play Store or search engine, as well as requiring them to give websites more options to stop their content from being used by Google's AI products. Especially because there's also the matter of finding a buyer for Chrome, right? Not a lot of companies have $20 billion lying around. And then even there, the companies that could afford it and would want to buy it, like Amazon, they're already facing their own antitrust scrutiny. With, for example, one Bloomberg analyst saying that he thinks Chrome's sale is, quote, extremely unlikely, but that maybe OpenAI could take an interest, saying that would give it both distribution and an ads business to complement its consumer chatbot subscription. But fortunately or unfortunately, depending on who you are, it appears that it's going to be a while before
trailer, take two.
I am Steve.
On the weekend of December 2nd, 1983, a two-day music festival was held in Hamburg, Germany. The event, named Hörfest, was the first of an event that would become a fixture in northern Germany throughout the 80s and early 90s. Put on by the radio station NDR, and sponsored by organizations like the Hamburg Conservatory, its purpose was to showcase young, upcoming German musicians. The second day of the festival begins with a speech by Hamburg's Minister of Culture, Helga Schuckart, and she's followed by a panel of music industry professionals. The rest of the day would feature several acts that had made their way to that stage after a rigorous screening process that eliminated hundreds of bands. One of the bands that found themselves on that stage was called Fret Band, led by a musician named Michael Hadrick, who had a band of the same name for 2 years in Philadelphia. Having returned to Germany and remade the band, by the time of Hörfest 83, Fret had already been building a solid reputation in the local scene. But ultimately, it would be a different project that got Michael much more attention. Eventually. A band called Fex. Why would Fex get so much attention? Well, you see, Fex is the band responsible for the most mysterious song on the internet. This video is sponsored by Helix. Helix makes premium mattresses and bedding, custom fit to your needs and shipped right to your door. Everyone sleeps differently, so Helix has you take a sleep quiz to match your body type and sleep preferences. I'm a side sleeper, and it's a great time to upgrade your mattress. Visit helixsleep.com/wang and get 20 bundle with your Lux or Elite order. In a few of the other Lost Media videos that I did this year, I said that I really felt that this was going to be the year that we solved the most mysterious song on the internet. But every time I said that, in the back of my head, I'm like, if that doesn't happen, I'm gonna look like a total dumbass. Well, here we are, and although I may still be a dumbass, it's not for that reason. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, you really should go back and watch all of my videos on the most mysterious song on the internet, because there's a lot of ground to cover. But to keep it short, the song dubbed the most mysterious song on the internet was recorded off of German radio in the 80s by a young man named Darius. It sounds like this. In 2007, his sister Lydia posted Darius's recording online, hoping to identify it. And in the following 17 years, it would go on to become basically the most infamous lost song of all time. The song that was a catalyst for opening up this whole world of lost media for a lot of people. Yet, as more and more new cases of lost media would open up and get solved, this one always remained a mystery. Until now. The final story arc really begins with the NDR radio playlists. NDR, of course, being the radio station that Darius recorded off of. After becoming aware of their key role in this mystery, NDR themselves became involved in the search, and thankfully they maintained very thorough records over the years. And they were able to provide spreadsheets of all the songs that played on the air during the relevant time period. As people were searching through these playlists, some noticed that a few of the songs were labeled as being by Amateur Band. A thread by PicottoPog18 almost exactly a year ago looks into what the listing Amateur Band might mean. The Amateur Band listings seem to be grouped together, so perhaps NDR had a show where they featured unknown acts. Furthermore, one of these large blocks of amateur bands appeared on September 17th of 1984, which would have placed it between some of the other songs that Darius had on his mixtape. PicottoPog was convinced that the song had to have aired on that block. A user named Kirk1V noted, however, that in German, band can also mean tape, and at the time, it was pretty common for hobbyist musicians to record jam sessions with no intention of it being a full-fledged band or anything like that. I think the interpretation of tape is most logical. School or college or youth center had a porta studio, allowed some of the students or regulars to use it, some teacher sent it to NDR, it got played and went into oblivion from there, like many other recordings made that way. If his theory was correct, and that song in fact did have that kind of origin, could actually be bad news. It might make it impossible to identify. It could mean that no recording of the song existed at all outside of Darius's. Could also mean that the people who did it wouldn't even remember doing it or who they did it with.
Today we're declaring war on the ordinary. I'm here to introduce a piece of culinary art.
I remember every time.
But still, that was just one theory, and nobody could be 100% sure what NDR meant by amateur band. So people kept looking into that. In May, a user named OK Horse believes they got to the bottom of it. AG Hurfest. I don't know if this topic has been discussed. I think the amateur bands are part of this AG Hurfest protocol, and they share screenshots of a German article about the event. It describes an event named Hurfest, which was produced by NDR and a number of other sponsors. Musicians and comedians were asked to send their demos to the radio station. The chosen acts would perform live to be voted on by the audience for cash prizes. Over 500 acts applied that year. A German user named Lord Elland would find that NDR had actually released several compilations of Hurfest bands, but these only began to be released in 1985. Which of course was after when the song would have been recorded. In fact though, this wasn't the first time Hurfest came up as a lead. People have been coming across it as far back as 2021. User probably doesn't exist commented that in the past, people were only able to find scans of mentions in Hamburg newspapers that only included a very small portion of the bands. But the Hurfest lead would be revisited once again in July, this time in a post by Successful Bread 347. Successful Bread noted that Hurfest 1984 happened on the 14th and the 15th of September, just 2 days before that big chunk of amateur bands appears in the spreadsheet. Additionally, according to a piece of promotional content that they found, the bands would be recorded live. And there was a theory that the version of the song that we all knew was actually a live recording. Users who were more knowledgeable about production pointed to how it was mixed and mastered. But the problem was there didn't seem to be a complete list of the bands anywhere. People were able to find clues that revealed what some of the bands didn't. Users who were more
thing is, it sounds like a studio recording, but if it's taken from a soundboard with no audience feedback, this might also explain the amateurish mixing of the DX7. If so, this might also mean that there is no lost single cassette acetate master. Apparently, live recording off the air that we already have might be all we get. Might also explain why the voice trails off in places. Maybe in the heat of the performance, he moved his head or jumped around or otherwise changed the alignment of his mouth. TMS doesn't sound like isn't properly mastered. It seems to be mixed on 4-track.
More knowledgeable about production pointed to how it was mixed and mastered. But the problem was there didn't seem.
I mean, if they had like well, okay. Good equipment, like some good condenser mics or whatever, I guess. Yeah, on stage. Or at least some good equipment, good quality. Sure. SM57s, SM58, something high quality mics. And the bad mixing of the keyboard could also partly be not just bad mixing, but reverberation, like, or something like because of the range of the keyboard and the notes he's playing, maybe it's cutting through, being picked up. But so the shit monitors and PA and everything that they're using is loud enough that that's coming through, but you're not hearing crowd, because during a song like that, you wouldn't be hearing the crowd because people would be like dancing and shit. And it's possible that, it gets cut off before the crowd applauds at the end of the song.
Seemed to be a complete list of the bands anywhere. People were able to find clues that revealed what some of the bands were, but the list was far from complete. But a possible breakthrough came about when a German user named Stemba17 discovered the Archive of Hamburg. It appeared to be an organization that digitized various forms of local print media, including newspapers and posters, and it had listings for Hurfest 1983, 84, and 85. Nobody could be 100% sure what was in these archives, but it could possibly be the answer to everything. But this wasn't like the Internet Archive. It wasn't actually online. And despite it saying that it was open to the public, it wasn't particularly clear how you can actually get access to it. A user named 94XCYK would find the proper process to do so, but someone would have to go in person, and each page would cost 60 euro cents. And there was no clue how many pages there actually were. Stembe made a request with the archive, but these things take a while. In the meantime, however, a user named Snigelpasta made a big discovery. So one of the bands that people found performed in 1984 was called Twilight. Snigelpasta managed to get in touch with one of the band's members, Peter Jack. And Peter Jack just so happened to have all of his Hurfest stuff saved, including a poster that featured the entire list of 20 bands. It also mentions that the event is being broadcast on multiple stations, such as NDR on September 17th.
But I didn't see. I mean, there's Twilight.
A user stations list of 20 bands.
Folk lead. Rock and Pop. They'd be on the Rock and Pop. Bogart Joint. I fucking love it. Bogart that joint. Magic Lane.
It also mentions that the event is being broadcast.
Die Schwillinge und die Blackgang. Gummy bear.
Broadcast on multiple stations.
Timeless. Zugast. I think that's I don't.
Such as NDR on September 17th. A user of the forum, Purple Dog with Spats, had a friend who lived in Hamburg. His friend would go to the archives, and he found out that the cost of digitizing everything would have been absurd. But the vast majority of the stuff was irrelevant. Mostly just bureaucratic stuff like invoices and whatnot. They estimated that only something like 25% of it was actually useful. So that's the stuff that was scanned. Despite eliminating like 75% of the paperwork though, they were still left with nearly 1,000 pages. That's a lot of pages, so a team was formed to go through it all. User Purple Dog with Spats, Lord Elland, Marion 1412, Probably Doesn't Exist, Successful Bread, Johnny Me Too, and Stemper 17. Eventually they put together a list of about 900 bands from 1983 to 1985. One of these bands may have potentially been the band behind the song. This list was made of many, but not all of the Whorefest applicants. That's way too many bands for a small team like that to go through. So to help organize things, a thread was made where people could claim a band to focus on in the comments. Successful Bread will also make posts called Whorequest, where the community would focus on some of the bands that hadn't been looked into yet. In an FAQ he made about the Whorefest lead, Successful Bread noted that it's not confirmed that the band we're looking for was actually at Whorefest, but even if they had no involvement in the festival at all, we're still looking at an event in the same area, in the same time frame, put on by the same radio station. Even if they didn't make the song, someone at the festival might know who did. Thus, Whorefest became the main focus of the search for the coming months. Then in October, Marine 1412 would come across the clue that blew the whole thing wide open. While searching for info about Whorefest bands, he came across an old newspaper article. A piece that ran about a band called Fex. They were a Kiel-based band that won a talent contest in Bremen in September of 1984. Their music was described as rock with wave and pop influences. You know what else has wave and pop influences, don't you? But you know, that's hundreds of bands. That means nothing. I mean, over the course of the search, so many rock bands with wave and pop influences have been looked into. But there was something unusual that stood out to him. Something that he probably never would have noticed had he not been disengaged with the search. That being the name of the keyboardist, Michael Hadrick. You see, previously, Marine had been looking into a band that performed at Whorefest 1983 called Fret Band, and Michael Hadrick was one of its members. So maybe this was something. And he was actually able to get in touch with Michael, who was now 68 years old. Michael replied and sent him some of the songs that he made with Fret and Fex. One of the Fex tracks was called Subways of Your Mind. Here it is. This is a completely different recording of the song, but it's the song. This version appeared on a 3-song cassette including other tracks entitled Heart in Danger and Talking Hands. So that's it. That's the most mysterious song on the internet. Subways of Your Mind. Shout out to the very, very small percentage of people who thought that was the title. Marina informed Michael that this search was actually the subject of a massive, several decades long search that millions of people were aware of. Michael had no idea. Before Marina went public with the discovery, Michael asked if he could first talk to the other band members. And after speaking to vocalist Tura Rockwart and bassist Norbert Zierman, they registered the song and agreed to making all this information public. Later, they would provide user Damn Piggy Lost Wave with a live version of the song that was recorded at the Roxy Paderborn in May of 1985. Now, of course there was some skepticism about this discovery, but to me, this live version 99.99999% confirms it. Like, this is clearly the same guy singing the same song in a different live recording. And the music has all the subtle differences you might expect from a live performance. Funny enough, there are actually quite a few close calls in the history of the search. After the discovery that Fex was the band who made the song, a YouTube channel named More German Grooves uploaded another Fex song he had. This was a song that wasn't on the tape, entitled Jenny. It appeared on a compilation from the Zeus Newcomer Show, which was a competition in Germany where winners picked based on who got the loudest applause. Apparently they even had meters set up that measured the decibels. The uploader noted that they actually bought this compilation 3 years ago while looking for the song, and they didn't realize that they found the band. A few replies asked how he could have heard that voice and not realized it, or he just replied that he's not good at identifying voices, and the music style didn't seem to match. Which honestly, I think it's very likely that I would have done the same thing, because the recording we're all familiar with has this kind of darker post-punk or new wave kind of sound, while this track is kind of like... For that matter, even the tape that Michael shared has more of a David Bowie kind of vibe that I would have expected. Lord Ella noted on Reddit that a lot of people actually came across this compilation and did the same thing, they just didn't realize it. The band Fret had also come up a few times as far back as 2021. In fact, Successful Bread had developed an AI tool for the search that suggested looking into Fret a few months before the Whorefest lead became the focus. So how are the band all reacting to this? Shortly after the reveal, Michael, who had never stopped making music, posted about the discovery in the comments of a song from his current project, Silk Vision. This is Michael from Silk Vision. In the 1980s, I was a member of the band Fex in northern Germany. A few days ago, I learned that a song we recorded with the band around 1983 is the most mysterious song on the internet. This absolutely caught me by surprise because I was not aware of the phenomenon. I immediately contacted the original band members, and we couldn't believe something like this happening. Now we are busy resolving the mystery, and we decided to reunite to re-record the song. We'll keep you posted.
Oh, wow.
Michael's daughter would come to the subreddit, proving her identity by posting
That's
a picture of the
insane.
cassette with Michael's DX7. Ironically, she herself became interested in internet mysteries a few months ago after Celebrity Number 6 was solved. But she hadn't actually heard this song until all this happened. She gave some info about what he was doing, that he wasn't able to get much sleep since it happened, and he would be meeting with the other band members this week. He was also doing a ton of interviews that she kept the subreddit updated on. She didn't have answers for a lot of the questions people had for her, but she was trying to get him to do a Reddit AMA. She was able to clarify that the band is pronounced Fex and not FEX or FX. The first interview Michael did was with a German outlet called TZ. In the interview, he notes that after he was contacted, he just dug out a few old cassettes from his time playing in bands in Kiel. Depending on how much music that actually encompasses, there's a chance that he might have grabbed any other cassette tape and this mystery would still be unsolved. Like, there's a universe where he sends Marines something completely different and the mystery just never gets solved. How did your former band members react? We were all completely surprised and overwhelmed by the really nice comments and contributions. We suddenly found out what was happening on the internet without us noticing. But that wasn't because we were old hands and not digital natives. There's simply no trigger. Throughout the search, a lot of people assumed that maybe these guys just aren't online because of their age. But as it turns out, they are online, they just happen to never see it. Which is totally reasonable. I mean, every other day I feel like I come across another celebrity I've never heard of, but they have millions of fans. Michael also has a bunch of stuff to prove that they are who they say they are. We have complete material that we can cite to remove any doubt. Original recording of the studio session, recording from the rehearsal room before the studio session, live recording of at least 2 of our performances where the song was played, statements from the original band members, witnesses from the studio session, our agent at the time, detailed description of the recording situation, the unmistakable voice of the singer. He also noted that they've all lost touch with their drummer Hans Siever and assume he stopped playing. They found the drummer. Hans Siever sat down and read his morning newspaper only to find out that his old band from 40 years ago was the talk of the entire world. He still has his Fex cassette tape as well as the original drum set he used to play the music. He's excited to catch up with his old bandmates and looks forward to participating in the re-recording as well as hopefully a few shows. Michael, on the other hand, a software developer by trade, also worked as a studio musician and composed music for commercials, musicals, and film. As for the song itself, he said it was mainly the vocalist Tour's idea, and the rest of the band built the song around it. And even back in the day, this was one of the main highlights of their catalog. As for how it wound up on the radio, they're not actually sure. He suggests that perhaps their agent did, which, if that's the case, that would explain why the version that played on NPR is different from the version on the cassette tape. In an interview with Derek Spiegel, he spoke a bit about how people were discussing the song online. For example, he hadn't considered the song to be a new wave song. He felt that new wave bands were more extreme than they were. He also clarified something that I was a bit confused about. According to Hydra, much of what has been compiled on the internet about the song is correct. For example, in the version circulating on the internet, a Yamaha DX7 synthesizer can actually be heard. He himself also played a Korg Poly 6 and a Korg MS-20. According to Hadrick, Subways of Your Mind was created sometime between 1982 and 1983. On a demo recording of the song, which he passed on to Marine Force in 12, the Yamaha DX7, which was released in 1983, is still missing. So the version of the song that we all knew was more recent than the one on the cassette. I was thinking that that one felt more final and polished, but I wasn't sure if that was just me having a preference for the darker tone. On the 11th of November, the band would go back to where it all really started, NDR. Oh shit, I'm on German TV.
The most
mysterious song on the internet.
After speaking a bit about the mystery, they performed an acoustic version of the song.
Shake it in, shake it out, but the sun will never shine. Paranoid anyway, if the sun waits on your mind.
This was the first time they had played together in almost 40 years, which has got to be kind of a surreal experience. I really hope these guys do it more. I know I saw some comments saying they're too old for that now, but I just saw a 72-year-old Fabio Frizzi, and I'm going to go see a 72-year-old Claudio Simonetti for the second time this year in a couple of weeks. Those guys came all the way from Italy, so I wouldn't count them out just yet. Finally, Lydia, Darius' sister, who set this whole internet search off all the way back in 2007, posted her thoughts to Reddit. Hey and hello everyone. I'm sure many of you have been waiting for me to get back to you, but apart from a lot of work, it took me a while to be sure that we really have the right band. And I also had to let the developments of the last few days sink in. Today, I want to tell you that I am now 100% sure that Fex is the band that wrote and recorded the song, and thus, the solution to this almost endless mystery has been found. Tonight, there was a meeting between the band and a journalist, and I was connected to the meeting by phone. So I had the opportunity to talk to Chur, Michael, and Norbert for about 30 minutes and ask some questions. They were so incredibly nice and still overwhelmed by the new situation and full of gratitude that we didn't give up and finally tracked them down. Others contributed far more to this than I did, so I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who put so much energy into the search, and especially those who put the final pieces of the puzzle together. This phone call removed the last doubts I had about the authenticity of the band, the way they spoke to each other, the warmth and friendliness, the joy that what they had created so long ago and made a difference, left me with no other conclusion than that we have found the true authors of our song. At the end of the phone call, they played the song again live acoustically, and I don't want to exaggerate, but I had a lump in my throat and tears in my eyes throughout. If someone had predicted this to me a few days ago, I would have looked at them very strangely. Of course, this is not the end, but the beginning of something new, which I'm extremely curious about and very much looking forward to. If possible, I would of course like to meet the band and talk to them, but first they should enjoy their new fame and peace. As soon as the song is re-recorded, it will be available on Spotify, and I'm looking forward to the number of streams. My brother would like to add something now that the last question mark in his cassette collection has been limited.